Welcome to the Black History series featuring Mr. Farrell and Mr. Ricky. Enjoy the knowledge.
All right. Thank y'all for having us here. Thank you. Again, my name is Mr. Ricky Clark, and this is Mr. Farrell Davis.
Pharaoh.
And we're excited about it. We will have this series. We'll be taking this every Thursday at 7 o'clock throughout the month of February. Please get your cameras ready and get ready to hear some of the knowledge.
That's right. Remember, 7 o'clock at the dock.
7 o'clock at the dock. And so today, we're going to get started. We promise not to be long, but we do promise to be strong. And if it's okay with you, we're going to let you know some of the books that we're going to be talking about. Pharaoh, want to start off with the black?
Yeah, so this book is an awesome book. This is one of the only, if not the only, black curriculum we have. It was constructed by Brother Dr. Walter Milton Jr. and Joel Friedman. Please look this book up. It is just awesome. 1,248 pages of real history, starting from, of course, pre-colonization up until, I think, COVID.
Yes.
Yeah, so great stuff. We'll be dealing with this a little bit. And then this is my book, book of poetry. It's called Tributes. Many people have passed on. Me and my dad did this together. Some people who inspired us, we wrote poems about them, and it's just in this book. It's also a good history lesson. And that's what's up. So everything else is just gonna come from the head.
All right. And I have two books too I want to introduce you to. We have What My Daddy Should Have Told Me, Life Lessons for the African American Male, where I'll talk about spirituality, education, my history, child support, what to do when stopped by the police, money, and manhood. And we also will be talking about my newest book that's called From Kindergarten to 12th Grade Can Equal 13 Years a Slave. And in this book, I'll talk about educate me about what are we free, dumb, did integration work, the miseducation of the Negro, to give black or go back, ends are only made in America in the equity walk. But today, we want to get started with ancient Egypt. One of the things that I always do when I start off is I ask simple questions like I want people to know that man is over 4 million years old. So the teaching that we're going to do today, I'm just going to give you the information. I just want you to give it back. You can write some of it down and come and get your work here at the Doc Bookshop. So I always talk about man is over 4 million years old. How old is man? Over 4 million years old. And the oldest bones that were ever found were the bones of a black woman.
Yes.
Right. All right. So I'll talk about that.
Rick, there's been a lot of debate lately over the last, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years in particular, where I understand this thinking because some of us, when I say us, some Africans here in America, we just don't want to deal with slavery. We don't even want to deal with the fact that we come from a continent where the image has been depicted of being a desolate continent, a continent of deficiency, a continent of being colonized and being controlled. So this narrative has turned into, you know what, African Americans are indigenous to America. Matter of fact, we are older than Africa.
Right, I've heard that story too, but
and the slave ships was a myth.
Right,
I'm hearing this.
I've heard that story too. That it did. I mean, I actually had a debate with one of my sons about this. Like, Dad, I was like, bro, come on, man, give me some. I'm not saying that there were not people here already.
Right.
There's no place in the world you can go that Africans wasn't there first, with proof.
Come on.
So I don't question the part about that. But what did happen in when the slavery did, and I know why they say that, but I remind people that slavery is not African history.
Okay.
It's the interruption of African history. That's why we're going to begin our history in a state of freedom.
That's good.
So if we could, I'll take us back to ancient Egypt. I want to take us all the way back to what is the original name of Africa, right? When the colonizers came there. So the original name of Africa is Alkebulan. Right? How do you pronounce it? I say Alkebulan. What do you normally say?
That's right. Alkebulan. That's right.
So Alkebulan, which literally means garden eating the mother of mankind. So every time I hear that, I remind people that when the Europeans came over, they called it that.
So we
gave it the name Africa. And you can Google it.
It'll say, and when we Google it, it actually says mother of mankind.
Mother of mankind or garden
of Eden.
So it says that. So I'm not trying to, and everything we say today and throughout these series,
please
Google it.
Look it up.
Please go and then contact me. So I always tell people that the original name of Africa is called Alkebulan. And so when the Europeans came over, what they saw was godly people. Right? These were godly people. Why? Just the fact to say the Garden of Eden, the mother of mankind, they were godly people.
Yes.
So they wasn't hurting people, anything like that until the Europeans came. So I'll start off with that, and then I'll go into ancient Egypt. There's a book, I'm going to be referring you to some books. There's a book that I'm reading now that's called The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu. And I encourage you all to read that book. But in the book, it'll take us all the way back to ancient Kemet, right? And back to the times when they started reading and writing. So I asked a question. If I would ask a simple question, if the first mathematician, noted mathematician, would be Imhotep, right? Well, if Imhotep was the first mathematician and noted, he came before Pythagoras, and they say that Pythagoras is the father of math, and Euclid is the father of geometry, which cannot be true because the pyramids were already built. So whenever I hear Europeans talking about things like Greek and Rome, remember, they don't come on the scene at 30 BC, right? So you have to count 300 years down, then count up 30 before there was even a Rome or a Greece. And by the time they got there, Pharaoh, the buildings were already there, the schools were there, the pyramids were there. We didn't call pyramids. They called them pyramids.
That's right. Right. The Egyptian, the Kemetic word for pyramid is mir.
Mir.
That's right.
Right.
M-I-R.
M-I-R, which is called mir. So they the ones that called it a pyramid. And they called it a pyramid trying to put it down.
Yeah.
Right? They use it as like a block of cake or something like that. But that's not what it is. So we got to go back to calling it what it is. Right? It's called mir. And it was used to show strength, ascend. I mean, I'm ascending from here, being strong. And then even when they take the word, they call it a sphinx. It never was a sphinx. It was a hermakin.
That's right. That's right.
Of Heru, right? So they call it a sphinx. These are, and you got to know, well, how do I know that they did that? Because it was built 300 years before they even came on the scene.
And now we have there's some French archaeologists I was watching a couple of years back on the channel, and they were just they were keeping it real. They were like, they examined the residue on the side of the Sphinx.
Oh yeah.
And they said, no, this is not wind erosion like they thought. It's not even sand erosion. It's water erosion.
Right.
So that changes the whole scheme of things, because the last time there was water in that region of the world was over 8,000 years ago.
Teach, bro. And what was something you always talk about? Whatever that when you see sand,
that's right. Whenever you see sand,
there had to be water.
Had to be water
at one time.
And it also, you know what it does? It also lets us know how they transported those stones, like the Great Pyramid, which still stands today. Yeah. How many stones did they say?
48 stories high, 755 feet wide, taking 2,300,000 stones.
So how did they transport those stones?
Each stone weighed 3 tons. Now, I got a degree in mathematics. I don't even try.
But this is why
Pharaoh thinks
this is awesome.
Pharaoh thinks it's the water.
There was river systems, and that makes all the sense.
Now, I don't question that.
That makes all the sense in the world, because just like we know we could put anything. My grandfather was born in Alabama. He's passed on. He was born in 1908, but he moved to New York City. That's where I'm from. He moved to New York City to work on the battleships. He was an underwater welder. And when I look at those battleships that's still there today, one is called the Intrepid. It's like a museum. But these are giant ships that are in the water. So anything with buoyancy, it doesn't matter how heavy it is. It can float in the water. So
I said, that's why you say that.
That's why I said, I'm like, so they was moving those.
I had a whole different other theory. So I'm not gonna go there. But if I went there about the pyramid, it wasn't water. It was something I don't know. And you don't either.
Yeah, no.
But so let's start with the pyramids. So then I'm asking questions. So if we built pyramids, right? Not if we built pyramids, most noted statue is called the Hermakin, not the Sphinx. Right. Well, let's talk about colleges and universities. So I always talk about the first university is called the Grand Lodge of Watts. And at the same time, it was one of the first universities. Right. I call it the first HBCU, but also Timbuktu. And why I'm so excited about talking about that is because they have manuscripts that's dated way back then. They called them the name of the book is called the Badass Librarians of Timbuktu. And he's talking about how when the Egyptians came in, when the Romans and the Greeks came in, well, they started stealing the books. Well, they started hiding them. So in Timbuktu and Kemet, they hid these books all over. And people started looking for them. And now they're bringing them back. I wanted to show you. The Europeans said that black folks had never had anything in writing. Now they're trying to show them what it was in writing. They had books. They had manuscripts. So if I take you out of Kemet, and I talk about the first university, I asked the lady name. The first university, they taught 4 subjects. Every university to this day teaches those 4 subjects: religion, applied science, liberal arts, and business. Every one of them teach religion, applied science, liberal arts, and business. So we've been passing it down from one generation to the next. And if you think about it, even right now today, if you want to be a doctor or a nurse, you have to say the Hippocratic Oath. Meaning, I swear to Asclepius, the god of medicine, you identified Imhotep. So
Asclepius is the Greek word name for Imhotep.
So a lot of that
Imhotep is a real person that really existed.
His name
Matter
is
of fact,
Imhotep.
he designed the step pyramid.
One of the first pyramid, and the stethoscope.
That's right.
And shears, and he was considered the first multi-genius.
And the symbol was also the caduceus.
That's right.
The symbol we see for the medical
industry. It goes like
two snakes around the staff.
He did that one as well. So I'm staying in ancient Egypt for a minute. And the reason why I want to stay there is because everything stemmed out of it. Everything stemmed out of ancient Egypt. Beautiful. And the real name for Egypt is Kemet. And it literally means land of the blacks, not black land, but land of the blacks. Not black land, but the land of the blacks. I repeat that. Land of the blacks. You can Google it too. Everything we say, you can Google it. But and I'm talking about that, Pharaoh, because within that, he's saying, well, so we invented writing. Well, let's deal with the numbers first. There are only 9 digits in the world. Where do 9 digits come from? And so we'll deal with the digits. So that's dealing with the numbers. Now we're going to talk about writing. Right, that would be hieroglyphics.
First known writing.
So who wrote it? Who read it? All right, and then you talk about religion. When you ask somebody, "Where did the Bible come from?" Ask your pastor. He will tell you that it came from pyramid texts and coffin texts. All of the Bible came from pyramid texts and coffin texts. Well, here's my question: where were the pyramids, right, and where were the coffins? Because if you know where the pyramids were and where the coffins were, you know what the text was. So it goes to show you that.
Any type of discrepancy in that understanding, you can go to the pyramids today.
It's still there.
The writing is on the wall.
That's right.
That's what, matter of fact, that expression comes from. The writing's on the wall. The writing's on the wall, predating 6,000 years. Right there today.
Every story is written on that wall.
And it can't be disputed or debated.
Can't be disputed. And that's what I love about Kemet. They always did things. They knew that one day that we'd have to come back here and show that. And the other thing I want to share with you as we move through this series is that if you will notice, most of the statues in ancient Egypt, and it amazed me, most of the women's statues, they had nose, but all the men's statues, they took off the nose and the lips.
Like somebody
just about all of them.
Looks like somebody was upset when they saw those images. Really.
Yeah, they was upset when they saw the images, right? And then it's a sad part that even we get upset about our own images because they made it look so bad. You saw what Mike did with his nose. And then his brother did it too. When you don't love yourself, something wrong. But the reason we don't love ourselves is because we don't know ourselves. But if you know yourself, you can't love nothing but yourself.
And that was deliberate. When we were brought over here, and like I'm gonna just be fair. The majority of us were brought over here, and even those that were here were kidnapped and made into slaves. The first thing they did was take away our identity, took away our name. How you gonna take away somebody's name? And then take away their language. Whatever language I speak in, you cannot speak it. And then take away our religion. Our religion, our
norms, our foreways, all of that.
So this is why we have situations where we don't like ourselves, because we were taught by somebody else to deny ourselves.
So with that said, I had 10 minutes to go right into that. I'm gonna come up out of Kemet, and I'm gonna give you the alley-oop.
Okay, cool.
So now that we came up out of Kemet, take us there.
All right, I'm gonna deal with these major 3 empires we had after. So when we deal with Egypt, the end of ancient Egypt, or Kemet, as we know it, began with the Greeks. I have to use this name so you understand the beginning of white dominance, if you will. The letter A. A stands for Alex. Alexander the Greek.
Or Alexander the Wicked.
I don't call him the Great.
I don't call him the Great.
But when he conquered Egypt, that was the beginning of Greek rule. Now, when he conquered Egypt and then he was killed himself, his first general took over, Ptolemy. And the Ptolemaic rule is when all of the Greeks sat in the pharaoh's seat in Egypt. Ptolemy I up until the very last Greek pharaoh. Ironically, the very last Greek pharaoh was a woman, and her name was Cleopatra. Now, the thing about Cleopatra that was
people really, don't know that part. Go ahead.
The thing about Cleopatra that was really interesting was her dad was Philippator. He was Greek, but her mother was a black Egyptian.
I know he's gonna say that.
And she was a royal
of royalty.
Right. And so how do we know this? Because Cleopatra was the only Greek pharaoh that could speak the native language.
That's right.
Why? Because her mother taught her. So she seduced Julius Caesar, because Greek was running things, but the new up and coming power was Rome. Julius Caesar being the architect of Rome, he came and said, let's get Egypt.
That's why Julius Caesar in July we have 31 days.
Come on now.
Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar we have 31 days.
That's right. So when he came and tried to conquer Egypt, Cleopatra seduced him, and then they had a child together. They had a child named Caesarion. That child was born. They had to cut Cleopatra. That's where we get Caesarion birth. That's right. So then Cleopatra. Then they killed Julius Caesar. Then the next leader came, and that was Mark Antony. And the same thing she did with him. So the final leader to come from Rome to conquer Egypt at the final conquest was Augustus. Augustus was the great nephew of Julius Caesar. So that's why we have Augustus. August is named after Augustus, and July is named after Julius Caesar. So that was the beginning of Rome dominance. And when Rome dominated, they went for years, and the fall of Rome turned into Europe, of course.
Right.
But during the time in Europe, this is awesome history. During Europe's Dark Ages.
And remember this part, we talk about the Dark Ages. Because then we gonna have the Moors come in.
Yeah, because they tell us this Dark Ages is how they describe their own.
Right. They said what they Dark Ages was.
Dark Ages.
Go ahead, Pharaoh.
They said it was 500 to 1500 AD.
Right.
This is the Dark Ages. There was no literature, no writing,
Can't
no learning.
Read, can't write.
Only thing was war and the church.
Right.
The Roman Catholic Church. They ran things, but they were just dogging.
At that time, they were still burning witches and women at the cross. They did stuff. It was very savage. They had no sense of humanity.
Nothing.
None whatsoever. Nothing. That's what they taught it. And then they died of plagues.
That's right.
They didn't bathe.
That's right.
But remember, when the Greeks and the Egyptians, when they came, I don't want to call them Egyptian. When the Kemites was there, we had bathing, we had war, so we did everything. So they were trying to do opposite of us, which they did, and look what their downfall was.
So during the Dark Ages, 500 to 1500 AD, during that exact time, when in Europe had no literature, no teaching, only war, when they were enslaving each other and just fighting each other, they're just barbarism. So at that same exact time, 500 to 1500, what were we doing in Central and West Africa?
Living in gold cups, drinking out of gold cups.
Ghanaian Empire,
right?
Which started right? And then the Mali Empire.
That's right.
And then the Songhai
That's
Empire.
right. You mentioned Ghana. Yeah, at the exact same time. So you got notes to prove this. So we're not just saying this.
That's right. And that's when Timbuktu was created.
That's what
in the Mali Empire.
So let me go back there. From the Mali Empire, you bring back the Timbuktu. So that's during the time. So when the Romans and the Greeks came in, they knew that they didn't have any respect for knowledge. So what they were hiding, they weren't hiding gold and diamonds. They were hiding books. And they've hid these books for so long that they brought them out. Right. And now they're creating a library
for it. They try to claim them for themselves.
And well, not only, but the ones that we've had, what's my man, Muammar Gaddafi tried to buy him, Henry Louis Gates tried to get him. These are manuscripts over 3,000 years old. They came from Timbuktu. So I'm loving that part. That was one of those libraries that they had the books. That wasn't a library, it was a library. And everybody came to get that.
Yes, sir.
And so the only way that they became educated is when they started reading the books and our teachers. So that's why they always recognize Aristotle, Plato, Pythagoras, and Socrates. Well, if you ask a question, any of those people, they learn from us. They learn from us. Where did they get the information from?
Yeah, from Egypt, straight from Egypt. And Socrates, Plato, they admitted that they went to Egypt to study.
That's right.
And then so Socrates was the first, and then Plato was his understudy, and then Aristotle was his. But the only difference was Aristotle, who was down with Alexander when they came in, he tried to claim all these books. Like he wrote 1,000 books.
Right.
He's a plagiarist. Near book.
Yeah, he couldn't have wrote them in all those different subjects. He could not have done that.
Right.
So that's a story.
Yeah, right. So
plagiarized.
Yeah, he plagiarized. So fast forward from that time.
So now we coming out. Well, now you had Mali.
I want to talk about Mali. Yeah, because Mali was. Well, before even Mali, I did with Mali. Okay. The first was Ghana. But out of Ghana came a great man named Sundiata. And he was an architect for Mali.
Right.
And Sundiata is where the story The Lion King comes from.
Teach, bro.
If you just Google that, look up the story of Lion King. Is the story
based of our history.
It's based on a real life person. Sundiata was considered to be. He was as a child they said he had a disability, but he was kind of weak and mild, and his uncle wanted himself and his offspring to rule. So they chased him out. He was exiled, and he came back. I mean, literally, the story of Lion King.
Real true.
And he came back and took over and became the greatest king for Mali, creating the empire of Mali. Right. And in Mali, after his passing, they had about 2 more generations in Mali. The great Mansa Musa.
Go ahead.
Mansa Musa was the man. He was just so brilliant strategically as far as army, his army
and religious
and spiritual belief system was awesome. But he was also generous. They were so rich at the time because gold just flourished in that region of the world at the time, where he did a pilgrimage to Egypt,
to Mecca.
Right.
And
in that they say he depreciated the
economy,
the worth of gold, because he gave it out.
He gave it away freely. He gave away so much gold that it threw off the economy.
Yeah, even his slaves had satin blankets and all kind of fine linen
in gold.
Awesome.
Made in gold. And I love that part about Mali. But he went, and what people understand that at one time we did study a lot of Islam.
Yeah.
But it was different back then. The Islamic people, if you go and read some of the books from this book, I'm telling you that they were the learners.
Yes.
You know, they were considered the learners.
Yeah.
But they has been written just like the Bible had been co-opted.
Right.
The Quran had been co-opted too. And they went back and found out in the Quran. I'm reading this book, and he says that they accepted Christians and Jews.
That's right.
They was like, but they said don't kill them.
Right.
Right? They're in my land. So if a Muslim allowed them in there, then it was okay to stay there. I'm like, wow, I never knew that before.
But once
but if they didn't invite them there, they weren't allowed to be there.
But once a foreign culture adopts the religion, you know, religion is all about the culture. So once they adopted that religion, it started shifting to their belief systems, their customs. Just like the same thing, because Islam and Christianity were both created in Africa.
That's true.
But they were adopted by foreign cultures. And that's why today Christianity has nothing to do with African principles.
Right.
Like a lot of that is European, because they adopted it. Same thing with Islam.
Same thing with Islam.
Yeah, so a lot of the original ways of Islam is, when these black men we're talking about were practicing Islam, is different than the Islam today.
So the reason why we're studying this and telling y'all that, go back and get the books for yourself. There's another one I think you
don't believe nothing we say.
Go check it out. Civilization. You should get that book too.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. I want you to be able to trace it. The reason I kept talking about
Byzantine, that's awesome.
One of the reasons I was talking about badass, this called the Badass Librarians at Timbuktu, bro. You got to get that book.
Yeah.
And it was so deep that not only take us all the way in ancient Egypt and ancient time doing the schools and things like, he brought it all the way back to now, showing you what Muammar Gaddafi tried to buy him. And then Henry Louis Gates went down there and tried to get it, but they kept their own library. So if you go there now, they have a library in Mali. They're trying to reconstruct Timbuktu. They got a lot of them old manuscripts. They have these glasses. Now you can't touch them, but they in there.
They in there.
And it's amazing.
It's also
they used to hide the books inside the damn sand.
What?
They were hiding the books in the sand. So when the Europeans came,
they
thought they was taking something because they took the gold and took the people, but they wouldn't give them the books.
Wow. And so the name of the university in Timbuktu, because Timbuktu originally was a trading post. It was timber, and then it became a permanent trading post right there. And so Timbuktu, so it's an area in Mali. And in that's where the great university Sankore. Sankore is the university that was in Timbuktu in Mali, in the Empire of Mali, and they had up to 25,000 students.
And they fed the nation. Nobody else had those universities in the world, and it was all black folks. So I'll call it the first HBCU.
Yeah, and guess what they taught there, Rick?
What?
Religion,
applied science,
I use the acronym
liberal arts and business.
RALB. I use that acronym so you remember RALB. ARLB.
That's right.
Religion. And when we say religion, it's the spiritual belief system.
Right.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
In applied science, liberal arts, and business.
Let me go back to the applied science. When we say applied science, we're talking about math, physics, chemistry, astrology, things like that.
And liberal arts, what are we talking about?
Liberal arts, we talk about poetry,
literature,
reading, writing, things of that nature, right? Theater, art, that.
Yep. And then business, you already know.
Well, things understood about the business. It's always been business people, even to this day.
That's right.
It's because we're social people that we can interact with just about anyone.
Right. Matter of fact, anytime the river system is usually the way of trade. Right. If you think about the terminologies used in the river system, the currency.
That's right.
What is currency?
Cash.
And the bank.
That's right.
The bank. So that was the original way.
Well, let me help you out. But not only that, the first, the Nile River, which is the longest river in the world, 4,127 miles long. That's the first. And it flows up and not down, and it's considered as the birthplace of humanity.
That's right.
Right. So everything started on the Nile.
That's right.
Right. So water has always been involved in it. So I think you can go back to that.
Yes.
So I also want to share with you about a few African kings and a few African queens.
Awesome.
So when we talk about the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, you got Khufu, Khafra, and Mikra, which giving you the father.
Are these real people that really existed?
These are human people that
exist. These are not three kings that we read about in books.
Them are the three kings they talking about. Yeah, if you think about it in the Bible, them are the real three kings. Khufu, Khafra, and Nicaragua. And they have these
Yes.
3 pyramids that sit right on the equator. And
That's
every
right.
year they line up with the stars.
That's
They
right.
line up with Orion's belt.
That's right.
Then when you start thinking about things like that, how did they do that?
Mhm.
So that means they had to know geography, they had to know astrology, they had to have been in 50,000 years, know 50,000 years that the stars shine at.
Yeah.
And what's deeper than that, they had no cement and no electricity, and they built it perfect.
That's right.
Everything they did it for God, and they did it perfect.
Yeah.
So I thought that was amazing. So when I began to hear that and bringing it forth, and most people want to talk about slavery, but I tell them slavery is not African history. Slavery is the interruption of African history that lasted fewer years than Mali, Songhai, Ghana, all those places like that.
Benin.
Totally different.
All
Benin,
these-
you can
right.
go and see that. These were empires. But when we hear about it, we only hear about one place,
Yeah.
Kemet.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, I think it's very important that we.
Well, they say Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt. It's important that we learn this because if you can't answer the question, and Rick asks this question every time, name a time when Black or African people were not enslaved and in control.
Yeah, I ask that everywhere I go. Name a time.
And we're not, oftentimes, especially if we're African American, if you will, we just can't name it. And that's not cool. We just gave you 3 empires. And then, of course, all of Egypt.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
I ain't even put that one in there.
We
Right.
put that in there, right? But we have to understand it because we have to be able to tell our children this.
Right.
If you can't tell our children this, what are we doing?
So I asked a question, name a time when we were not enslaved and empowered. What do you tell your children? If you didn't hear this, what would you tell your kids if they came to you and said, Meemaw, Pawpaw, Daddy, tell me a time when we were not enslaved and empowered? What would you tell your kids? Nobody begins their history in slavery. Do you hear what I said?
So I've heard
nobody.
One of the answers they said, Rick, when we were together, somebody said Barack Obama.
Oh yeah, that's sad.
I said, yeah, but I get it as a kid. He was the president. Right. But you have to understand, I used to say this when Barack Obama was president and him and his beautiful wife and his wonderful children, right? I used to be like, it's like if somebody was to come here from another country and didn't really know America. Right. And it was like from an African country, like from Burundi or something. Like, it was a real life guy from Burundi, like coming to America. And he was to come in and see, oh my God, y'all have a wonderful president and first lady and children. This country is awesome. We'd be like, psych,
right?
No,
don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype.
That's your boy.
That's right. So,
you and that's why it's important for us to study this series.
And no shame on them.
Yeah,
it's just talking about what this country really is.
But I think it's important for us to study these series is because I talked to a lot of people. They don't know. They can't name 5 Black men who did something great. Martin and Malcolm can't be one of them. They can't play sports and can't be entertainer. Ask your son right now. Can he do that? Ask your husband. Ask your wife.
Ask yourself.
Ask yourself. A simple question. I'm not trying to make you not simple, but why don't we know those kind of things? Yes. So that's why the series is important. That's why we'll be here every Thursday at 7:00 asking these questions. So in a few minutes, I'm going to have some questions from the audience. We have a few people here that can ask questions. So we'll start with that. Any questions?
Black heroes.
Thank y'all, live your audience.
They came on in.
Y'all have any questions? I have a question.
Yeah.
You you spoke a lot on Egypt and I'm just wondering, like, what about the Zulu nation and just different other?
So when I mentioned it about Egypt, I also made the comment to Pharaoh saying that there were other empires outside of Kemet.
Right.
So we did mention Mali, Ghana, Songhai, and even when you talk about the Zulu warriors, there were several warriors.
They were later.
That were later on to come. So we're trying to stretch here so that when we come back next week, we'll pick up with those as well. Right. Yeah, so I want to understand.
Some of us.
We're gonna include those now because next week we're gonna go into the Ma'afa.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, that's gonna be rough.
Weeks, though, don't we?
We're squeezing all this in.
I know.
No problem.
And I want to make sure we do talk about the Ma'afa because a lot of folks don't. When you ask them about slavery, they don't have a clue. I ask some of my kids and they don't really know what happened.
Yeah, and we'll deal with that because slavery, the narrative that we've been given for slavery is not really what it was.
No, it's not.
We taught them while we was in bondage.
So
but that's
but the question was.
So what's this again? So this kind of summarizes the significance of knowing ancient African civilizations.
Let me help you out. So one reason I think it's important because I make the statement: if you don't know what was, you can't know what is, and if you don't know what is, you ill prepared for that to come.
That's right.
So wise people study his story, her story, and my story. Yeah. And so I believe that it's only when you begin your history in a state of freedom that you come to properly understand your role. Yeah. So if you look into it, the only time that we was in that state of freedom, you'd have to go all the way back to Kemet, right? So Mali, Songhai. So if we don't go back that far, then we don't have it. There's no place else you can go in our history or American history that it would say that. So that's why I always start in ancient Egypt. And I always say Egypt because it was a zenith at our highest.
Yes.
Not to say that the other one weren't, but we was at our highest when we was in Kemet.
Yeah.
So that's why I always start with that.
Yeah. And then from that, you have to realize that ancient Egypt predates. We're talking about, like we say, when Alexander conquered Egypt, that was 325
right
BC. So it's like before that, we were thousands of years. So after that, we had great empires, but we have to start at the crux. We have to start at the beginning.
So are you saying then that the Ashanti?
Oh, they were very sharp.
Yeah, and all that was after Egypt.
Yes.
Or
oh, yes.
During the same time.
No, that was
after Egypt.
After Egypt. So,
definitely after.
Yeah, when we look at,
because by the time when you start talking about them, there's gunplay, there's weapons involved.
That's right.
So before then, they were still slinging rocks and doing all that. But it's when the gunplay came in. You know, you talk about the Ashantis and the Ebus and all that. That came on later.
Because we have about during the time. I'll give you this reference. During the time of the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires, that's from 500 all the way up to 1500.
I love Pharaoh. He get the dates
right before colonization started. We had great empires that existed because the Ashanti and the Zulu, they fought against who? These Europeans.
But I mean, but they were here thousands of years before.
So we're saying we're not saying that they were not.
You can't say that. I'm just asking.
Come on,
because make it seem like we only had that one empire. But
no, he didn't say one.
You
must have heard us.
So I'll give you.
We named 5 empires.
There's a difference between empires and civilizations. I'll give you a civilization that was around before all of these people, even Egypt.
Come on,
one that was around before Egypt.
Yes,
the Dogon people.
Yes, right.
You ever heard of them?
Yeah, yes. The ones
Dogon people. That's right.
They can see the star series. Yeah, I know.
They told us that Saturn had rings around it. They told us that Jupiter had 4 major stars.
Right.
They knew the 9 planets. These people live in the bush. How did they know that? It's crazy.
So that's what you talk about civilization and empires.
Yeah, different.
Okay.
So we did mention earlier about more than one empire.
I think that helps clarify.
Yeah, because empires are when you have an army. Even if you didn't have the gun at the time, you still
had an army.
You set up because the Songhai Empire was our last greatest empire, and they were conquered.
Shu Ali.
Right. They were conquered by the Moroccan Empire, who the first time the gun was used in battle in Africa. And this was the Portuguese. They supplied the little Morocco army with guns, and that's how they conquered the great Songhai Empire.
That's why you talk about Morocco. And then when the Moroccans came out, that's when they started hiding the stuff from Timbuktu, because they was coming for them, but they was coming for the wrong thing. They were coming from the jewelry, the diamonds, and gold, when they were hiding the books.
Yeah.
Europeans didn't even know to come get them, but they couldn't read, so they didn't know no better.
Yeah, and just show you how masterful we were even before the gun, like the Songhai Empire. This is how they would defeat you. They used their cattle. Yeah, they used their cattle to trample you first, and then they come in behind with the spears and whatever.
Well, you know, Shaka used that too.
Yes, Shaka did it too. That's right. So yeah.
So any other questions?
Okay.
Yeah, so the distinction between empires and civilizations, because we had wonderful
great civilizations.
Yeah, all through Africa, all through even here in Americas. You know, we had thriving civilizations here. You know, the Olmec. You know the Olmecs?
Here in America.
When you see pyramids that are built in Mexico, we see step pyramids that were built in Mexico.
Right.
We built them. The Olmecs.
Yeah.
We see these big heads.
And they have the exact same dimensions of the pyramids.
Yes.
The exact same dimensions.
Yep.
And if you take a rubber band and stretch it all the way over here to America, it's one line. It's still on the equator.
Yep.
How did they do that?
And you know what they found too? Check this out. This is crazy. They found some of the mummies that they found in Kemet, right? These were pyramid builders. They found DNA in these mummies of cannabis and whatever cocaine comes from.
Right.
That's only indigenous. Right. That's only indigenous to the Americas.
Right. So how did they have it?
They was trapped. Obviously they were trapped because they built the same pyramid in.
And you think of the Nile River, I think of Mississippi River.
Yes.
You think of the Mississippi River?
Yeah. Yep. That's
in Memphis.
That's the same. It's very
the
similar.
word Memphis come from. There's a place in Cairo, Memphis. Yeah. What are you looking for, Pharaoh?
I was looking for the there was something on the Zulu. I want to find.
Any other questions while we
check
here?
out it.
Okay.
All right. Then if not any other questions,
awesome.
if you learn something new, raise your hand. All right,
I
everybody.
love this stuff.
Even you learn something new.
And listen, we encourage you. If there's anything that you heard today that moved your spirit, that resonated with your soul, please write it down. But also look it up, because I'm gonna tell you, it's one thing to hear what we're saying and be like, "Yo, that's awesome." But when you go look it up for yourself, you usually won't forget it.
And it's life changing too.
Yes.
But let me also leave you with this: get your kids involved. They're not reading in schools. I mean, me and Pharaoh in schools all week. They don't study. We need to get our kids learning about their history, because guess what I found out? When I'm in there lecturing to the kids, they like this. Ain't they, Pharaoh?
Yeah.
They don't say nothing. They twirling. They ain't got to use the bathroom or nothing. They own it.
They own it.
I can even do the same thing with elementary kids. But the point I'm making is that when they learn their history, their grades change, their mannerism change, their respect for mankind came. If you want to love your children, teach them their history.
That's right. That's right.
Can we close with you all giving 5 book recommendations dealing with African civilization and pre-colonial Africa?
Got it right up there.
Bam.
Bam.
Right here.
You got it right there.
Bam. Civilization down.
And I add this one as the 5th.
Stolen legacy.
And I'll give this one as the 5th because it's a curriculum.
Add this one.
You know what I mean?
All right.
You got it right
so
there.
that was an easy question.
Was
Don't
easy.
even ask me that one. Destruction of Black civilization. Come on.
That's it.
I think something we should be reading right now is the ISIS paper, especially with what's going on in lieu of y'all Orange Man.
Yes.
So, yes,
See,
I think we should read the ISIS paper.
That's the whole other.
Because then they'll understand why they act like that.
That's right, Rick.
It's in they separate. That's not what we're here for. We gonna stay
focused.
focused. Stay focused, Ricky.
Whirlwind.
Yeah, whirlwind. That's what we say in our meeting. Whirlwind. So thank you. Egypt.
Yeah,
So let me leave you with the poem. I always do.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna leave you with 2 sets of notes, because we're talking about ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Is that cool? Sometimes I feel like I'm above the ground and the ceiling, and institutions that disengage in healing. Instead, open warp wounds trap me in a room, consumed with hypocrisy. But it has occurred to me that Greek philosophers didn't author their own philosophy. The statues on campus be watching me. Washington, Jefferson, Williams clocking me to say, Negro, your time is up. But I don't run laps around tracks. I don't run laps around scholars of tomorrow, because new school of thought is merely our history borrowed. They label me militant, black, national radical, trying to put our learning process on a sabbatical. But we don't apologize. We the truth to the whites of their eyes, infected by white lies. They even try to get us to see their point of view by brothers that look like me. But that brother don't walk like me, talk like me, or act like me. Even turned his head and ran when I asked if he was black like me.
Scott.
Memorizing their thoughts and forgetting our own and wonder why we always feel alone. From the media to academia, hanging our brothers like coats. And in their schools, we always take what? 2 sets of notes. 1 set to ace the test, 1 set to know the truth. And when we find the historical contradictions, we use the first set as proof. Proof that our youth minds are being polluted, convoluted, diluted, not culturally rooted in anything except Western massacre. Most of us are scared of Africa. We view our mother's land through the eyes of David Ham and Immanuel Kant. But Immanuel Kant tell me about a land he's never seen, a land rich with history, beautiful kings and queens. But they'll have you to believe otherwise. The history is built off high-rise lines. The pyramids were complete before Rome or Greece were conceptualized. And then they'll claim that the Egyptian race is a mystery. You tell them, read. He wrote us his book too. It's their history. It can't get any clearer. Young people, look in the mirror. We are the reflection of divinity. Don't be fooled by selective memory. Walk high and listen to the elders who spoke. Young people always take
2 sets.
2 sets of notes. Thank you. See y'all next week. Same black time, same black station.
Hotel.
Hotel.